I'm not a huge proponent of this release of the Epstein file stuff. The only reason that we are where we are is because of the just gigantic hypocrisy on it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think it's great. I think it sets a very dangerous precedent for the DOJ. But here's the news, is I still don't believe it's going to end up being released. The reason I am reviving Epstein for today's show is because, as you know, the House has voted to release the Epstein files. Mike Johnson is saying he wanted it amended when it went to the Senate, basically saying, well, because this was a discharge position in the Congress, we couldn't make amendments. We were counting on the Senate to make them. The Senate didn't make them. And so now the question is the president going to sign it? It took me a while to actually figure out what were Johnson's concerns. Now, it seems suddenly Johnson is concerned with something he certainly was not concerned about before. Let's listen. This is Speaker Johnson. This is yesterday. This is number 4 on the House floor.
It fails to fully protect victim privacy. It could create new categories of victims. It potentially jeopardizes grand jury secrecy. It fails to prohibit release of child sexual abuse materials that are not appropriately defined in the legislation. It jeopardizes future federal investigations, and we have national security concerns regarding classified information. We'll put this in the record because we need the legislative record to reflect what is the legislative intent behind this vote. I used to litigate cases. We would litigate federal statutes and whether or not they could survive, and legislative intent is important. And we need to say clearly for the record, as a Speaker of the House, I'm saying to you, this legislation that will pass today is flawed and it must be amended.
Well, it's not going to be amended. It's not that he doesn't have a point, by the way. Look, I'm very sympathetic to this argument of beginning the process of releasing investigative files is a dangerous, dangerous business. Now, it isn't Democrats who were initially calling for all the files to be released. It was far-right Republicans. They're the ones who initially drove this. Then Democrats decided they liked the issue politically, so they jumped on the bandwagon and suddenly started to care about the Epstein files. But it is true that this is a sort of dangerous precedent to set. Except, why didn't Speaker Johnson care about that when there was this phony report of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden each getting $5 million in bribes? Remember this? This became a central issue in the Republicans' impeachment effort. Republicans had demanded the FBI release the unredacted form documenting the unverified allegations. And what we found out since then is that the guy who made the allegation, Alexander Smirnoff, had lied. He falsely claimed to his FBI handler that executives from Burisma paid Joe and Hunter Biden $5 million. He fabricated the story. The guy was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Republicans didn't care then about releasing unverified information. I mean, suddenly Speaker Johnson seems to be very concerned with potentially publishing information or details related to, quote, not credible or false allegations, which he has argued could harm the reputations of innocent people. Yeah, no shite. But that's everything that you guys have been demanding in connection with the Biden stuff. I'm not a huge proponent of this release of the Epstein file stuff. The only reason that we are where we are is because of the just gigantic hypocrisy on it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think it's great that all the Epstein, I think it sets a very dangerous precedent for the DOJ. But here's the news, is I still don't believe it's going to end up being released. Now, I think that now Pam Bondi is going to claim, well, you know, we opened investigation into Democrats. She was actually asked about that today. This is number 1. Here's what she said.
The Epstein files, does the new investigation by the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney prevent the department from releasing all of the remaining files?
So we have released over 33,000 Epstein documents to the Hill, and we'll continue to follow the law and to have maximum transparency. Also, we will always encourage all victims to come forward.
That's not an answer. So the question, by the way, almost all of the documents that they released were already things that had been released publicly before. So don't believe them when they say that they released 33,000 documents, as if like that's transparency. Remember, the only reason that we know through all of this new material how often Trump was mentioned was because it came from the Epstein estate. Now, give the Oversight Committee credit. It was pushed by Democrats, but eventually agreed to by Republicans, that they would subpoena those documents from the Epstein estate. But I do have concerns. I just don't think that Pam Bondi is become a straight shooter, a fair actor on this. I think she has become a personal attorney for Donald Trump. And I think anyone in that role has to, because Donald Trump will fire anyone who doesn't serve in that role. You would hope that people who used to be good lawyers like Pam Bondi, like Todd Blanche, are trying to push back on Trump behind the scenes. But that is increasingly seeming unlikely. And for those who say, well, Trump needs to get rid of Pam Bondi, again, you're going to get someone worse. So, this guy who's running the weaponization department couldn't even get confirmed as U.S. attorney. That's the kind of guy you're going to end up with.